Jeff and I are here with another video on lessons learned, where there's more to what you consume. Today, we're going to be diving into The Incredibles and how the movie is a great lesson on overcoming rejection.
Showtime.
If you haven't already seen this movie, just stop the video right now and, unsubscribe. Nah, I'm just playing, but seriously, you gotta go check it out. It's a really good movie to watch with the family whenever you get the time. The Incredibles starts off with Bob Parr, also known as Mr. Incredible, on the way to his wedding with Elastigirl, soon to be Ellen Parr, as he notices crime that provokes a call to action in which he answers. After saving a cat from a tree and stopping a bank robbery, Mr. Incredible finds himself stopping Bon Voyage from doing his mischief, but gets interrupted by his #1 fan, who goes by the name of Incrediboy. After getting rejected many times by Mr. Incredible, Incrediboy was still persistent, imploring to be made as Mr. Incredible's sidekick. Bon Voyage takes advantage of this opportunity and plants a bomb on Incrediboy's cape. This distracts Mr. Incredible from apprehending Bon Voyage so that he could get the bomb off the oblivious Incrediboy, in which he succeeds to do, but at the cost of the bomb exploding on a railroad track. After handling the train, Mr. Incredible saved a man from a suicide attempt, which would later find him sued because the man didn't want to be saved. This lawsuit would impact all superheroes, making it so that they could no longer operate in their superhero identities. Years would later pass, yet Mr. Incredible is still helping people, but with insurance. Of course, being confined to cubicles and quotas, he found himself pretty miserable most of the time. Meanwhile, his children Violet and Dash struggle with being normal around unpowered individuals, especially Dash. With all his energy and super speed, he constantly finds himself in trouble as he has no place to take his energy and apply it. Mrs. Incredible doesn't mind the common family lifestyle and prefers their current situation instead of fighting crime. Mr. Incredible, on the other hand, would sneak out from time to time with his superhero friend Frozone to fight crime undercover, but would get caught by Mrs. Incredible. This led to a big argument as she expressed her preference to just have a normal life. Soon after that, Mr. Incredible would get fired from his job for throwing his boss through a wall, or walls I should say, and he neglected to tell his wife about being let go. One day while cleaning his office, Mr. Incredible found a package that was planted in his belongings. It turned out to be from a lady from a secret organization that was spying on him during his superhero escapades. This package contained an invitation to do superhero work for the organization. Mr. Incredible would accept this invitation and would train and work with the secret organization in place of his insurance job without telling his wife. But she did notice that he became happier and more lively day by day, until one day, Mr. Incredible was invited to partake in a top secret mission. This mission would be later revealed as a trap, as he was met with a top secret robot set out with intent to terminate him. In the battle, he realized that the one behind the organization was a man named Syndrome, who would later reveal himself to be Incrediboy. Turns out he didn't take Mr. Incredible's rejection too well, and set out to create the secret organization as a trap to take out the superheroes undercover. He would later capture Mr. Incredible. Meanwhile, Mrs. Incredible finds out Mr. Incredible was actually fired from his job and doing superhero work on the side. Man, if I had a nickel for every time I said Incredible. After going to the family costume designer Edna, she would be given Mr. Incredible's location via a tracker that was designed in his suit. She would then set out on a mission to go find her husband, finding out that her children snuck in along with her on the way as well. Once she got in proximity of the facility, the aircraft she was flying was shot down by a missile sent by Syndrome. Mr. Incredible would be aware of this, as he was trapped in the same room and believed the missile succeeded in taking the life of his wife. It didn't though, and her children would find another way to get to the island to save Mr. Incredible, realizing that they're not only stronger embracing their true selves, but working as a team to stop Syndrome's evil plan with the help of Frozone. Syndrome's plan was to stage a robotic attack on the city, and due to the lack of heroes in which he eliminated, this would allow him to fake as if he was the hero to save the day, making him quote-unquote famous. The plan backfires, and Syndrome quickly realizes that he was just a man with toys, unable to do anything without the controller. The superhero team would destroy the robot, saving the day and putting an end to Syndrome for good. Okay, so the most important lesson learned from this movie is
No capes.
Nah, but the real lesson is about learning how to overcome rejection and reframe your disappointments. Let's start off by breaking down the word disappointment itself. The word disappointment is commonly used to describe a negative emotion that is a result of some form of failure or impediment, but when you really break down the word, it tells us a bit more. Hopefully we can use this information to help us deal with our disappointments better. Okay, so starting from the right of the word, suffix ment means the action or process of. The root word appoint means to name or assign to a position or ordain, resolve, or determine. And lastly, prefix dis means apart, asunder, or in a different direction. So basically the word disappointment means the action or process of being turned away from an assignment, position, or a determination. You can see why emotionally this would be a big deal, especially if you were invested in said assignment, position, or determination. But really sit down and ask yourself this question. How often are you disappointed in a day or even a week's time, but you still make it through? Things don't always go exactly according to plan, and I mainly pose this question so that you can look and see how you deal with the little disappointments. How you deal with them can offer an important template to use in regards to dealing with the big ones. I mean, when you really look at it, there's a benefit in being correctly disappointed because it offers a lesson learned in the reproof failure and rejection brings. More on this as the video progresses. Scripture has plenty of great accounts that offer good examples of how to deal with rejection and disappointment. It's important to actually study the mistakes of our forefathers and how they bounce back from them so that we can learn how to avoid those mistakes and bounce back from the mistakes we've already made. This is how we break generational curses. Of course, the other nations can do this as well and turn to the one true Elohim, creator of the universe. Anyways, moving further. As far as overcoming rejection and disappointment in Scripture, what better than the start in the book of Judges, also known as the Book of Failure? It starts off after the events of the book of Joshua and the acquisition of the Promised Land. Israel ends up disobeying Yahuwah's commandment that Israel should not make leagues with the surrounding nations, and this ended up making it so that the surrounding nations were thorns in their side and stumbling blocks, creating tough times. In these times, Yahuwah rose up Gideon from being the least in his house to leading a squad of only 300 men against a whole army of Midianites, delivering Israel from their troubles. We also have Jephthah, who was a reject by his family due to his mother being a harlot. After being put out, he was called to action to deliver Israel from the Amorites and the Ammonites, giving Israel a period of peace. But in the Word, there isn't a better story, in my opinion, about reframing your disappointments than the story of Joseph. I mean, we should all know the story, but for those who don't know, it starts off in Genesis chapter 37 and ends in chapter 50. Joseph was the second youngest of the sons of Jacob and shared his mother Rachel with his brother Benjamin. He was actually Jacob's favorite son, and this would make his brothers jealous of him. He was a good interpreter of dreams and had two dreams that foreshadowed the fact that Yahuwah would set him above his family in leadership in the future at some point in time. He was rebuked by his family for this and even was cast into a pit and sold into slavery by the Midianites and Ishmaelites, ending up a servant of the house of a man named Potiphar in Egypt. There he would be approached romantically by Potiphar's wife. Joseph, of course, being a man of Elohim, turned down her many advances. This caused her to go mad and even threatened to kill Joseph if he didn't lay with her. He would escape from her clutches, but would leave his garment, which was torn by her grip as he was escaping. She used his garment as a tool to frame him, telling everyone that Joseph forced himself upon her, although he was innocent. This landed him in jail. In the jailhouse, he regained ranking and was even placed to watch over the inmates. This was all due to the blessing of Elohim upon him and his hands being a son of Israel. In the jailhouse, he would interpret the dreams of a butler and a baker, telling the butler to mention him to Pharaoh once he got free. These interpretations will come to pass, and the butler would forget about him for some time until Pharaoh had a dream none of his magicians could interpret. The butler mentioned Joseph to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh would request that he be brought to him. Once he came to Pharaoh, he interpreted his dream, which foreshadowed that there would be 7 years of plenty as far as production in regards to crops, mainly corn, and there would be 7 years of famine. Grateful for this interpretation, and with the understanding to see that Joseph was truly blessed by Yahuwah, Pharaoh appointed Joseph head of all affairs. The only spot he didn't have was Pharaoh's throne. In this position, Joseph would save Egypt from the famine by saving and storing corn during the 7 years of plenty, making them the main source for food in the 7 years of famine. This would bring riches and abundance to Egypt and pave the way for Joseph to reunite with his brothers, who lied and said to their father that Joseph was dead, putting their father in much grief. Impacted by the famine, Joseph's brothers made way to Egypt to buy food after getting news about their abundance. When they arrived, Joseph immediately recognized them, but they couldn't recognize him. Joseph would take advantage of this and teach his brothers a lesson by calling them spies, planting their money in their sacks to make it look as if they stole, and getting them to bring Benjamin back after imprisoning Simeon. This would put Jacob in great fear because he didn't want what he thought happened to Joseph to happen to Benjamin, his youngest of his most favored wife, who was then dead. In Egypt, Joseph would invite his brothers in to eat with him, later planting his cup in Benjamin's sack, making it seem as if he stole it. Benjamin would be in on the act and allow Joseph to imprison him, but Judah wouldn't give him up without a fight, which was inevitably stayed once Joseph revealed his true identity to his brothers. He would then send them to get his father and to bring the whole family to dwell in Goshen. There they remained until the days of Moses' calling. One thing that really stood out for me about this whole story is what Joseph told his brothers once they were finally united again. This is found in Genesis 50, 17 through 21, and starts off with his brother's request for forgiveness as it reads, So shall ye say unto Joseph, Forgive, I pray thee now, the trespass of thy brethren, and their sin, for they did unto thee evil. And now we pray thee, forgive the trespass of the servants of the Elohim of thy father. And Joseph wept when they spake to him. And his brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we be thy servants. And Joseph said unto them, Fear not, for am I in the place of Elohim? But as for you, you thought evil against me. But Elohim meant it unto good, to bring to pass as it is this day, to save much people alive. Now therefore fear ye not, I will nourish you, and your little ones. And he comforted them, and spake kindly unto them. You see, after being betrayed by his brothers, thrown in a pit, sold as a slave, framed, and falsely imprisoned, Joseph still managed to look at the bigger picture, reframing his disappointments and seeing the purpose behind them and the value in them. Viewing this from this perspective allows you to ask yourself, have I been truly disappointed, or was I just placed on a meaningful, purpose-driven journey? Alright, now getting back into The Incredibles, I don't think there's anyone that does a better job at displaying how not to respond to rejection than Syndrome, also known as Incrediboy. Syndrome can actually be a more perfect name for the villain, because if you really think about it, his character highlights the syndrome the new generation has, always being offended when rejected, creating cancel culture, and blurring the lines between fact and opinion, and impeding personal boundary by forcing people to accept others' ideals. In fact, you can say that Syndrome killing those heroes to give himself room to try and push his own agenda reflects current times, as those who spread truth are being canceled, making way for corrupt leadership to take over the consumption of the masses. It fits as well because most of this is done online via the use of technology. Syndrome had no superpowers, therefore he used technology. Although you can say his brain was his gift, he didn't use it in a righteous way. You see, without all the leverage in tech, people like Syndrome have no impact, weight, or power, unlike superheroes who would still have their natural gifts. Supplementary relationships only get you so far, and at the end of the day, it just ends up backfiring, of course leaving you disappointed. This leads me to Syndrome's main issue, idolatry. You see, Syndrome's first mistake was idolizing Mr. Incredible. 90% of the time, those who you idolize don't actually live up to the image you create of them in your head, leaving you more likely to get disappointed. That's not fair to them, and is not at all beneficial to you. Now, the second mistake Syndrome made was idolizing himself. All of his efforts were made to profit a plan that ended up with him getting all the fame and attention. This included taking the lives of the just. Both of the times Mr. Incredible destroyed the robots created by Syndrome, he used them to destroy themselves. It reflects the same way Syndrome was defeated. They didn't even really have to lay a hand on him because his ego and pride handled the whole thing. That's probably why Edna gave him a cape. That's why we shouldn't idolize. Instead, we should respect. Give all that energy to the Creator. Not only will He exceed your expectations, He made your soul and actually wants a personal relationship with you. He has a purpose for you, an appointment that will have you planted near the rivers of water like a tree no one can pluck up. Either you can accept that purpose or the opposite of it. Your purpose will bring you life and peace in the end, and personally, I wouldn't even want to consider anything other than that. Now, considering all of this, if Syndrome just learned to use his smarts to become his own hero, it probably would have led him to be more likely to partner up with Mr. Incredible. See, that's the problem nowadays. People don't want to make their own. They just want to hop on a moving train, a ready-made situation. Just meet the train at the station, and if they don't let you board, maybe it was because you were meant to fly to your destination, drive, or even walk. Shoot, every time I play Fallout, I never used the fast travel because I knew that if I walked, I would find something new and gain XP through all the battles, maybe even a legendary weapon, armor piece, or artifact. Developing yourself into a connectable link, a puzzle piece, or a building block, if you will, is an important prerequisite that mustn't be skipped. Mainly because not fitting in can lead to jealousy and hate through resentment and, you guessed it, further disappointment. This leads me to Matthew 12:30-31, where it says, And thou shalt love Yahuwah thy Elohim with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like, namely this, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandments greater than these. You see, in order to love others correctly, you need to understand how to love yourself. And I'm not talking about hedonism or excessive self-gratification. I'm talking about self-discipline. Giving yourselves everything you need to grow whole, healthy, and fruitful in all aspects. In doing so to yourself, you know how to do it to your neighbor. And as it says in Romans 13:10, Love worketh no ill to his neighbor, Therefore, love is the fulfilling of the law. This leads straightway to John 14:21, which states, He that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love him, and I will manifest myself to him. This would complete the circuit that is Mark 12:30-31, and is the understanding that Syndrome lacked in the beginning, so blind from his ambition that he tried to force things. Instead of handling the rejection and looking into the mirror to fix his issues, he used it to put his issues on others. A great example of this was in this scene here.
Release me! Now!
Or what?
I'll crush her.
Oh, that sounds a little dark for you. Now, go ahead.
It'll be easy, like breaking a toothpick.
Show me.
Which leads to this scene as well.
Valuing life is not weakness.
Oh, hey, look, if you're talking about what happened in the containment unit, I had everything under control.
And disregarding it is not strength.
Look, I called his bluff, sweetheart, that's all. I knew he wouldn't have it in him to actually...
Next time you gamble, bet your own life.
She really summed that up perfectly, huh? This leads me to Mr. Incredible himself, and how he is a good example of how to handle rejection and disappointment. In the movie, Mr. Incredible displayed an important mindset and understanding that his gifts were given to him for a reason, to be used in a good and fruitful way. We must replicate this understanding in our own lives, considering that alongside the flat-out villains of life, some people who you make an effort to aid might fight you back and bring you difficulty. I call these the 2 Ds, devils and doubters. And of course we know that doubt is the enemy of faith. Some of these people may notice the danger they put themselves through, like that guy that sued Mr. Incredible for stopping his suicide attempt. Or they may be completely oblivious, like Syndrome, also known as Incrediboy. Regardless, this of course may lead to discouragement and disappointment, and you may not get the flowers you deserve, and that's okay. 1 Peter 4:16-19 says, Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify Elohim on this behalf. For the time is come that judgment must begin at the house of Elohim, and if it first begin at us, what shall the end of them be that obey not the gospel of Elohim? And if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? Wherefore let them that suffer according to the will of Elohim commit the keeping of their souls to him in well-doing, as unto a faithful Creator. Because like Psalms 34:19 states, Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but Yahuwah delivereth him out of them all. So let all praises be to the Creator of the universe, and understand that unpicked fruits fall before the tree and become compost that nourishes the tree further through the roots. Shoot, sometimes it becomes a whole nother tree. With this understanding, we can make moves every day toward our Elohim-given purpose, making progress no matter how big, utilizing our Elohim-given talents and abilities. You see, when Mr. Incredible couldn't save people in the streets, he did it in the insurance office. Joseph interpreted dreams with his family, in jail, and with Pharaoh, saving, I'm sure, millions of lives. You see, they didn't let their circumstances define them, and there are 3 keys to achieving just that, listed by order of importance: perspective, persistence, and assertiveness. Joseph mastered the perspective. We covered this earlier, as he understood Elohim was above it all, and as long as he did his part, everything would work out. Mr. Incredible had the persistence down pat, always finding an opportunity to do good and help others with his abilities. Even through rejection and monotony, he became obsessed with his purpose in a healthy way. Every roadblock came with new opportunities. Every new opportunity came with something new to learn, ultimately leading to victory over the enemy. And lastly, we have assertiveness. Now, what does it mean to be assertive? To be assertive means exercising the tendency to positively state and or demonstrate the existence of something. And what is that something? You. God, the true creator of the universe, made you in his image, and because he exists, you exist with an aspect of him within you. You, your goals, your emotions, everything that makes you who you are according to the will of Elohim exists, and that matters. But you see, unfortunately, that doesn't matter to everyone, and that's why it's important to operate with an assertive behavior. In the Assertiveness Workbook, author Randy J. Patterson wrote, "Extinguishing your individuality is not a great long-term option. It leads to greater fear, more helplessness, sharper resentment, and deeper depression. Last thing you want to do is reject yourself by being too passive, or act out of character by being too aggressive." Many actually confuse assertiveness with aggression, but this couldn't be further from the truth, as the key to assertiveness is to control your own behavior, not the behavior of others, which is a proponent of aggressive behavior. Let's just look at the word aggression and what it means. The dictionary says that aggression is the practice of making attacks or hostile, injurious, or destructive behavior or outlook, especially when caused by frustration. Comparing both definitions, it's obvious that both of these behaviors are different. Notice that it says that being assertive is exercising the tendency to positively state and or demonstrate the existence of something. You can positively state the existence of your anger without acting out of character. This is where perspective and persistence come in, as it is nearly impossible to have assertiveness without them. They are what builds the confidence to stand firm and integral through self-discipline. And again, self-discipline is putting our needs before our wants and completely getting rid of the wants we don't need. So in conclusion, now that we have these 3 keys understood, let's use our mistakes and the mistakes of others as a learning experience and utilize our self-discipline to stay snug in our purposeful lane and develop ourselves with aims to meaningfully aid and connect in righteousness. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and a comment letting me know what you think. It all really helps, and I enjoy hearing y'all's feedback. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell notification for more lessons learned. Thanks for watching, stay blessed, and remember,
no kids!